Okay, so this is a sweet, simple little t-shirt I found in Paris about 5 years ago. And I threw it in the dryer and it shrank. And I loved it. I love the idea that it's a plain color with interesting embellishment, but it doesn't have a whole lot going on other than just using the knit fabric as a trim. So this was my starting point, and I want to point out something to you that I think is very interesting, is that the thread is not all the same color. The tension is not great. The tension is actually better and more perfect on the back side. So I love that the French designers are using home sewing techniques, but they're tweaking them. And they're being very economical with fabric and time, but extravagant with their ideas. I just think it's fabulous. So I came home and I did a version of it that I've really liked. So this is a different style, but I wanted to see what would happen if I used that same technique of just cutting self strips of the same fabric and sewing it on to the already cut out pattern piece. It was a lot easier than I thought, but you have to be sure that you have the right fabric. So this is where testing comes in. And you really, really have to test. And if it's, to me, if it's giving me trouble, I will move on and choose another fabric or use this technique on another garment where the fabric is more harmonious with it. So recently, as I'm getting ready to go to Paris again, I wanted to make a garment. And it was one of those experiences where I cut the garment out and I messed up all over the place. But to start out with, this is a wonderful, wonderful piece of fabric. To start out with, I got the pattern cut out, and here again, it is my favorite tunic t-shirt, pretty much made straight out of the pattern envelope. I laid it out. I was going to make it without any embellishment, and there was a flaw in the fabric. So, what to do? First thing I did was I made myself a sample. I thought, well, maybe I could just sew a piece of fabric on top of it. And what's interesting here is that I hope the photography captures this, but the right side and the wrong side are different. So I took a scrap of the fabric, I cut just strips, and I put them on a sample piece and sewed them in place. Now I'm going to show you all the ways of how to do this. But this is what told me it would work. I had what I call a big yes. Once I sewed 2 of these strips on, it was, oh, I like it. It's subtle, but it's elegant, and it adds a really nice weight to the fabric too. And it hid the flaw. This is still a work in progress today as we're shooting, but you can get a good idea of what the finished garment is going to look like. So I've done the same technique on the sleeves. I opted for a really plain neckline, no tricky neckline. This is just a folded over band stitched in place because there's a lot going on, and the width of the band relates to the width of the wider of the strips. And then in the back, see, I wasn't as elaborate with the back because I'll be wearing a vest most of the time over this, or a little sweater, but I wanted something on the back. So I just used a wider band that was stitched in place.